screen, or Lily's going to share their screen. We're going to walk you through a PowerPoint. And as I said before, if you have questions, just let us know either by raising your hand or by going into the reaction section and choosing something, because we don't want to forget anyone. So make your presence known. We're easygoing here, nothing formal. Just don't yell at us, please. It's snowing out. Can we have the next slide, please, Lily? This is our information session. I don't know if any of you, I don't recognize any names. Someone may have been with us last year when we did our racial economic justice and future fund information session. The two grant applications come very close together, but they're very different. One is looking at ongoing programs, and the other, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, and the other is looking at new, more inexperienced groups. Excuse my dog barking. Next slide, please, Lily. We're going to talk about Bread and Roses, how we work, and what we do. I'm sorry. Lily, can you take over, please, while my dog is having a fit? Does somebody ring the doorbell?
Absolutely. So some of what we're going to be covering today, we're going to discuss a little bit about the work that Bread and Roses does, how we define community organizing, which is pretty important to our grant applications as well. We're going to go into a little bit of each fund, Racial and Economic Justice Fund and Future Fund as well as our just general eligibility criteria. We're going to finish up with a little bit about how to apply for each fund and just generally any fund that Bread and Roses supports, and give some more information about our grant making process. And I believe Jordan's going to talk a little bit about the Giving Project and how that works around then. So a little bit about Bread and Roses Community Fund. We support movements and their leaders by organizing donors through our giving projects, moving money using democratic grant making. We are first and foremost a community fund and try to incorporate that into all levels of work. We try to build grantee capacity through all of our programs, workshops, and interactions with staff. And we also try to convene organizers and strengthen those relationships in order to build a stronger network across movements, as well as resourcing movements as best as we feel we can. In 1971, Bread and Roses was founded as the People's Fund. Here's a little throwback picture for y'all. Sandra, do you have any insight into kind of the early start of Bread and Roses? I'm a little new to the organization.
Actually, I don't. Okay. But Jordan does.
Jordan.
So the People's Fund was founded it's highly disputed, highly debated among older Bread and Roses members. But it started out as a group of young people who saw a gap in funding for radical organizations across the city. So they decided, okay, we're all gonna get together and we're gonna have garage sales and we're gonna sell wontons on the parkway and we're going to pool our money. But the thing about that group of people is they said, anyone who contributes to the pot of money should get a say in where the money goes. So Bread and Roses has a long history of that kind of grant making and that kind of community-based democratic decision making.
Thank you, Jordan. Next slide, Lily. So what do we mean by community organizing? We define community organizing as community-led collective action aimed at shifting the balance of power and making changes in policies or practices. We're looking for strong advocates of change. We're looking for people that are not afraid to take on the system or systems that are so well established and embedded that they hamper and actually do harm to individuals. We are very, very proud of the fact that we fund organizations that no one else will fund, because we know there's work on the ground that needs to be done, and that communities are coming together to get that work done, to answer the injustices that are being seen by all of us at this point in time and have been seen for a number of years. So you may be hosting town halls, you may be training community members on advocacy, you may be training community members on how to talk to their council people or their representatives. You may be doing petition drives. You may be doing marches. You may be doing sit-ins. Any action that is meant to change the trajectory of what's going on in the world today, especially in our city. Jordan's gonna talk to you about how it is we get the money that we so proudly distribute. Jordan?
Okay, so for this fund, which is actually two different funds, Racial and Economic Justice Fund and Future Fund, the primary fundraisers and folks who are going to be making the grants are the Giving Project members. So the Giving Project is a group of 18 to 20 people from all across Philadelphia. We are intentional about making sure that the folks in the group are coming from all different kinds of class backgrounds, all different kinds of racial backgrounds. It's important to us that the group is intergenerational, that there's all different kinds of genders, all different kinds of sexualities. Essentially, our goal is to bring together a group of Philadelphians that are just coming from all different kinds of backgrounds. The first part of the project, which lasts for 6 months, is really just working on political education, grounding ourselves in what are our biases, what are we bringing to this work, but also like, what are our dreams? Like, what is the world that we are envisioning and imagining and are really excited about? So that we can take all of that, here are the ways that we bring white supremacy to the decision-making process. Here are the ways that we can ask our brains to think outside of like typical limitations of what organizations are doing, so that we can take all of that into our grant making and really be able to listen to you all and really be able to listen to the folks who are applying to the fund and hear like, oh, this is like really creative, visionary, beautiful work. And like, this is where we want to put our money. I think next slide. Yeah. As part of a giving project, and this is a little bit of a pitch to you, what I love about this process is that anybody can be a part of it. Right now, because we're virtual, it's kind of anybody who has access to Wi-Fi, who has access to the ability to join Zoom meetings, which could mean you. That really means that we want folks, we don't want this process to be closed. We don't want this process to not be transparent. So for anyone who's like, I didn't get a grant one year, or I don't really understand how you all make decisions, we're like, cool, come and do it. Come and check out what the process is like from the inside. And as part of a giving project, you receive free fundraising training. So as facilitators, we are your fundraising coaches. You definitely improve your grant writing because you read a lot of grant applications and do a lot of interviews and really go through what makes a good application. You're going to build meaningful relationships with different people who are part of the project, definitely engaging in conversations about race and class. We have other giving projects that go in depth about other topics as well, but always from the basis of race and class. And conversations about how to support critical movements for change. And this is a lovely picture of the 2020 Racial and Economic Justice Giving Project. Some of those faces are here today. In our beautiful new office. Let me make sure that I didn't skip any important information. Yeah. So if you do have any questions about the Giving Project, joining, or just any questions about that process, you can feel free to email me or send those questions my way.
Sandra, transparent facilitation moment. This is my part, correct? Or did you still want to add something about eligibility criteria? I believe you're muted. All right, I can get started. Just some information about our eligibility criteria at Bread and Roses. So we make grants to organizations with a long-term vision for social justice that engage in strategies to promote sustainable social change. That's really important to our values and our commitment to being a community-driven foundation that's also transparent and in line with our support for community organizing and social justice movements. In addition to that eligibility criteria, we also have sort of locations that we primarily serve. So you need to be located in Philadelphia, Bucks, Chester, Delaware, Montgomery, or Camden counties. We also ask that you are a 501c3 organization or have a fiscal sponsor that is a 501c3 organization. If you're not quite at that stage yet, we also accept documentation of a pending application. We also would love for all of our grantees to be current with Bread and Roses grant reports. So if you have previously been funded in the past, making sure that you are up to date with any of your reporting requirements. We usually ask for our core funds for folks to submit a grant report within like a year of the award date of that grant. The only exception is for the Solidarity Fund, which has a 6-month cycle. You have to submit a complete application. We're pretty good about following up with applicants who may not have submitted all of their information or all of the correct documents. But if for some reason there is an important piece missing from the application, we will try and follow up before the deadline. And unfortunately, if the deadline passes, we will recommend that you move on to the next grant opportunity. But there is some flexibility there. And again, we also ask that every organization be using community organizing to create sustainable social change. So based on our definition shared earlier in the slideshow by Sandra. So a little more about this eligibility criteria. A focus on organizing and activism is really crucial. We ask that folks have a clear understanding of the root causes of the problems and issues that they are trying to address and make sure that that is reflected in the application. And that also will come up throughout the interview process with the Giving Project. We do get really deep into the root causes and things that go behind like the theory of change of each group and kind of how you conceptualize the work that you do. Changing the systems is a really crucial part of that equation as well. Having that systemic view is really important. We also ask that organizations try to look at building a local base for taking that collective action. So engagement with community and organizing with community to affect the issues that you're targeting. And we try to emphasize concrete outcomes as well. Yes. So another important piece is that the leadership of the organizations are primarily composed of people most affected by the problem or issue that is being addressed. We want it to be kind of a, grassroots organizational kind of structure, as opposed to sort of a top-down structure. We don't fund direct service work, social services, self-help, or empowerment programs in that way. That doesn't mean that these things can't be present in the work that you do, but we would love for the core of your work to involve community organizing and that more systemic change. In addition to that, we don't fund research, schools, capital campaigns, and building projects. And we also don't provide scholarships, fellowships, or grants to individuals, except through our LAC Scholarship Fund, which is a fund for students who are gay men. I saw that.
Mel, yes, has a question.
Go for it.
Hi, I'm curious just if you can speak to if there are any nuances in the difference between self-help empowerment educational program and providing space for political education and training community members to disrupt harmful practices, knowing those could probably be really blurry. Are there any specific ways that you can help us distinguish the two.
Can you talk a little bit more about that, Mel?
Yeah, I know that like one of the things you had named when you were saying what some of the funding could be for is providing space for political education. And so what is a training that is training towards an action? What is the difference between that and maybe an educational program? Like, I'm just looking at what you don't fund. Like, how could, or self-help or empowerment, like what do you see to be a difference between the two?
One of, I think a good example just happened with the last election. We had a number of groups that were working with the community in getting registered to vote. Not just telling people about the importance of registering to vote, but actually getting people registered and getting them to start talking to their communities about getting registered to vote and voting. Not soliciting votes for any particular candidate, just the importance of having your voice heard, that it's a right that of citizenship, and that it's important that you take that step to get registered and you take that step to go vote.
I see. So there's a translation into an action?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
We're looking for action.
Right. And I'll also say too, like sometimes with certain direct service work or like programs that are directed or framed as empowerment programs, there might not be that clear link to a systemic problem, right? I'd say that is a very important differentiation as well. So if you are educating somebody about like a medical issue, for example, but not tying it to the greater system, that could be a good example of where the like self-help or empowerment programs don't quite make the same connection to a political education program. There is a lot of gray area there as well. And I think sometimes it can be difficult to communicate that. And what we try to do at Bread and Roses on the grant making team and on the Giving Project is make sure we're seeking out that further information. We do try to invite grantees to share more about their story through the interview process if we do have more questions. If there's sort of like any doubt as to, you know, if the organization doesn't quite fit this mold, we try to like err on the side of like, you know, of caution and inviting the grantee in to share more about their story, recognizing that not everything can be fit into the proposal. Yeah.
You may also feel free to contact us. I mean, part of our jobs are to help you folks get funded. I mean, we really work hard to help folks get funded. So you may have questions while in the process of writing your application that we can answer for you. Obviously, we can't write your application, but we can certainly provide information and technical assistance.
Right.
Emily?
Yeah, thanks, y'all. I think perhaps like a cousin question to Mel's is like hearing this delineation very loud and clear. And I'm curious if Bread and Roses has some openness to funding the organizing work or funding organizing work that has a base building strategy of like building the base among folks who may be recipients of direct services, right? And if that can all exist under one roof.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
What we want individuals advocating for self. As Lily mentioned, we're not looking for top-down organizations. We're looking for organizations that are organizing at the very roots of a community. That I'm going to benefit because I know as a member of this community that this is what is needed, not because someone has come in and said, this is what you need.
Okay, thanks so much.
Any other questions right now? Lily, you're doing a great job. Go ahead.
All right, thank you, Sandra. Awesome questions, yeah. All right, here's a little bit about the other funds that we offer. So we do have Racial and Economic Justice Fund, Future Fund, which we're going to discuss a little bit further. We also have a Gender Justice Fund upcoming sometime in the summer, I believe, around August will be the deadline for that fund application. It could be a little later. I think we're figuring out the dates there. We also try to have at least one special issue fund each year. The issue is going to be determined sometime in the next few months, but this past year's special issue fund was regarding environmental justice. So we did support organizations doing that kind of work in the Philadelphia area. And another fund that has just passed, but you would have another opportunity to apply for next year, is our Phoebus Criminal Justice Initiative, which supports organizations doing work around the criminal legal system. Just to highlight some of these deadlines, for Racial and Economic Justice Fund, March 8th is the deadline for proposals. For Future Fund, April 12th is the deadline for proposals.
And that's by midnight.
Yes, by midnight. So which fund is right for your group? Racial and Economic Justice Fund. This is for organizations, obviously, who are using community organizing to promote racial and economic justice at local, state, national, or international levels. We tried to prioritize organizations that have like ongoing campaigns and have been very active in this work for a while. For Future Fund, on the other hand, that's more for new and emerging organizations that want to develop their capacity, their skills, and bring a base together to discuss the problem further and begin to do that work on their issue, right? So it's a little bit more of a capacity building piece, while REJ, Racial and Economic Justice, is more for established community organizations. So Future Fund can be a very good tool, and organizations can receive Future Fund grants multiple years in a row as well while they are getting off the ground. All right, and preparing your application. So this is sort of the nuts and bolts logistics that we on the grant making team are responsible for. So just so y'all know, we do try to make our applications and this process as accessible as possible. We don't want to be gatekeepers to funding, like Sandra was saying. We want to, help folks through and try and get folks access to these resources, unlike traditional philanthropy. So here are some things you will need before you submit your proposal. You're going to want to have some previous fiscal year financial statements, a current or proposed budget, your organizational budget, an IRS letter confirming your 501c3 tax exempt status, or the proof of your pending application to the IRS. And if you're fiscally sponsored, you can include a letter from your fiscal sponsor stating the intent of them to serve as your fiscal sponsor. And some organizations also include the IRS letter of their fiscal sponsor in their application as well.
Actually, we need that the copy of the fiscal sponsor's 501c3. We are required by the government to only fund nonprofit 501c3 organizations. And should we ever be audited, we may need to produce that proof.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons we collect tax exempt status certificates.
Yeah, that's helpful, Sandra. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to apply, first you got to decide which fund you want to apply for. If you feel like you can fit into REJ or Future Fund, one or the other better, feel free to decide which one you'd like to go for. You can apply for both. Gather all your required documents. And we use submittable.com, which is a form for applications, collecting applications for grants and scholarships. So when you go to breadrosesfund.org, we do have a web page for each fund that we offer. And on each web page, there is an apply now button that you can press. It'll take you to Submittable. We encourage folks to draft the answers to each question in a Word document or a Google Doc. It's not recommended that you try to keep all of your submissions on the Submittable website, because I don't believe there is a helpful way to save your progress. It might glitch out and you could lose some of your progress that you've made through the application. And just a note as well, Submittable does have a very solid help website, a support website at submittable.help. You can find a lot of answers to any technical questions that you have there, but we will also share our contact information at the end of the slideshow, and you can feel free to give me a call or send an email to the grants team, and we can help you through any issues that you're having technically. We also encourage folks to have another set of eyes, read over your proposal narrative, just to make sure you feel like it's up to snuff and ready to be submitted. And like Sandra mentioned earlier, try to submit before the 11:59 p.m. Time on the deadline date. That is when the application will automatically close. And I saw, I think Anita, did you have a question? Okay.
My question was in regards to the documents that are required. If it's looking at grassroots programming and things like that, how would they actually have that financial statement of previous year? If it's a new organization.
If you're,
now, Sister Returning Home is not a new organization. We would have all the required documents for that. But I was just curious, like, how would that actually apply for some of the newer folk?
So if you're a new organization, like within the last year, obviously you wouldn't have previous year's information, and that's fine. We understand that. We would want a proposed budget, but if you existed for more than a year, you should have some information on your previous year's expenditures and revenue.
Okay.
Awesome question. Thank you. All right. So this is a snapshot of what you might see when you're on Submittable trying to make an account in order to complete the application. So it'll prompt you to create your account. You enter some personal information, your email address and a password, hit create an account and continue, and then it should let you into the application. And if you're a previous grantee, you're also more than welcome to just use your previous account that you've used to submit other applications in the past. So once you make your account and you're in the application, this is sort of what it'll look like on the top. We'll have like the title and as well as some information about the eligibility criteria and what REJ or Future Fund is, and include some links to web pages with more information about like a list of recent grantees or some more information about how we define community organizing. So a lot of those resources that we're discussing in this PowerPoint are available on our website for you all to reference. And it's always a good idea to maybe keep that information up while you are completing your application, just so that you kind of know how to maybe frame your work for each grant. It's important to note as well that most of the questions have a word count, generally between like 200 and like 500 to 600 words, depending on the length of the question and how much information we'd like. If you're copying and pasting from a Google Doc or a Word document, you should be able to use a word count tool on each paragraph to make sure it falls within the recommended word count under each question. And if you are copying and pasting something that is over the word count, it will cut off like the last section wherever the word count cap was. So just be mindful of that as well in case there are any like incomplete like thoughts or sentences at the end of that paragraph for each question. We want to make sure that y'all include as much information as you can and that you're not taken by surprise by anything. Here we kind of have a snapshot of our 3 questions. The first one being like the fiscal year financial statement. This is a different format than the previous ones, which are short answer. Here you just fill in the appropriate information into each column as you go. And so that seems pretty straightforward. I think as you go down like the expenses list, you can just type in the numeric values for each one. We use a similar like format for our organizational composition chart, which just asks you to provide some demographic information about the like members of your organization or the leadership of your organization. So this will also be the same for the budget portion of the application as well. This can sometimes be a little confusing at first. So if you have any questions while you're filling this out, again, you can feel free to reach out to either Sandra or myself and we can answer any questions and walk you through it. So what happens after you click submit? So all of the applications after the deadline are pre-screened for basic eligibility by staff. That's to make sure that everybody who's applied has all their 501c3 documentation. They're all within the like target area, the regions and counties that we serve, and that they are doing community organizing. And so Following that, we try to send the applications, the proposals over to the Giving Project side for them to do their decision-making and start examining the proposals and conducting interviews. So those in-person interviews are going to be taking place virtually, and each interview will involve 3 to 4 Giving Project members, and I believe like 1 or 2 staff members as well. The Giving Project members will then have their decision-making day and make the grant recommendations that are going to be passed along to the board. So the board of directors then will be responsible for reviewing each grant recommendation and giving final approval. That's just really to, you know, have kind of another a set of eyes on all of the Giving Project recommendations. The decisions of the Giving Projects members are usually just the most important part of the process. It's pretty rare that the board of directors would disagree with something that the Giving Project decides because that process is seen as extremely important to the decision making. So here's a little glimpse at a timeline for REJ and Future Fund. I mentioned earlier that REJ's deadline is March 8th. The interviews are going to be around April 19th through May 30th. So around that time, if you're passed along to the next point in the process, you can expect to hear about an interview scheduling with Giving Project members. June 5th and 6th will be the decision-making days for the Giving Project. By the 9th, the board of directors will have given final approval, meaning that all applicants will be notified of the decision by mid-June. Over on the Future Fund side, it's a little later timeline. April 12th is the deadline. The interviews will be conducted between May 3rd to May 28th. And by June 5th, Future Fund will have made that decision. Board of Directors falls along the same date as REJ. And in mid-June, you can expect to find your decisions as well. And in terms of making the actual awards and the payments, we will try to get those all out before the end of June as well, which is the end of the fiscal year. So here's a picture of our board of directors. These are the folks who will be given those final approvals. And that is—
this is who you should be looking for instead of us.
Right.
You don't, if you don't get funded.
Sure.
Here's the picture again.
Yep. All right. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them now. You can also send an email to grants@breadrosesfund.org, or you can give me a call. Oh, and I realized the phone number did not update. I'm gonna go find the updated phone number. This is our office number. That is not as current since we are not in the office. But yeah, does anyone have any more questions?
I can let you know that both Lily and I get the copy of the grants, any email that goes to grants@breadroses.org. So just send a question and one of us will be able to answer it. I also wanted to let you know that in terms of process, once the grant is approved by the board, we generate an award letter and a grant agreement. The grant agreement must be signed and returned to us, along with an electronic transfer form. We are making all payments via direct deposit to your bank. That way, the money, you don't have to, especially with the Postal Service being what the Postal Service has become, you don't have to look for checks. So we'll ask you for that information. If you have a fiscal sponsor, the grant agreement will also need to be signed by the fiscal sponsor, and the electronic transfer will go into the fiscal sponsor's account for you, however it is that you folks have agreed to manage that account. Sometimes organizations will need to make expenses and then bill their fiscal sponsor, and they are then reimbursed. They may get the total amount and just send it to you. So it just depends on the agreement you've reached with the fiscal sponsor. So now we are open for any questions or comments or complaints.
Can I ask a question about eligibility for the Future Fund?
Absolutely.
Because I heard you say that the same organization could be applying to the Racial and Economic Justice Fund and the Future Fund, but I understand that the Future Fund is...
You can only apply for one or the other.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So my question maybe is answered then. I'm wondering like how new is new and emerging to Bread and Roses? For example, if you have received funding through another Bread and Roses fund, would you no longer be eligible for the Future Fund?
Not necessarily. You may have a new program or project that's part of your organization. You may have a new endeavor that you want to submit to the Future Fund for specific programmatic funding.
Okay. All right.
So it just depends on what it is that you want to do.
I have a question. I have a statement. Yes. Sandra, when I came on here, I was so super nervous when I introduced myself. You couldn't tell though, but I forgot to speak to you. And I just wanted to say hi to Bread and Roses staff and especially how to you, Sandra. Thank you. That's all I had to say. I didn't really want to.
Sappho and I talk a lot. Sappho's the kind of grantee that I like.
Thank you.
Ask, when there's a question, they call and ask. When clarification is needed about a decision, they call and ask. Feel free. I mean, we don't get upset because you call and say, what do you mean I'm not getting funded? That's not exactly how Sappho approaches.
I don't like that part of it though, but yeah. Thank
Mel?
you.
I love that. I had another question about Future Fund. I don't know if I missed something on the website, but when will that application be open, or at least the questions made public? Just thinking about like choosing one or the other and looking through the application ahead of time, if that's a possibility.
Yeah, let me refer to the calendar really quickly. I believe it should open shortly after REJ opens, which, no, it's gonna open March 1st.
March
so
1st.
That's when it'll open, yep.
So if you go to our website on March 1st,
Mm-hmm.
the application should be open.
Yeah, and just kind of on the subject of contacting us with questions, I did put my Google Voice phone number in the chat for y'all to reference. Feel free to give me a call or give Sandra a call if you do have her number with any questions or concerns you may have.
Thank you so much. And I imagine the questions for Future Fund and REJ would be pretty different. Is that accurate?
They could be, yeah.
Okay.
Or
great. Thank you.
there are questions that are similar. For example, tell us about your community, or tell us about your organizational structure. So and what you may be saying for either of those is that we are a group of people from the community that organized to work toward. That answer might be the same for both applications, for either, I won't say both, for either application. So there will be some similar questions.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm. Iris?
Yes, thank you. I found out about this talk today from a colleague of mine, and I'm glad I came on the call because it gave me some insight into the things that I still need to do. I am very much at the beginning of this work. I actually do not have a team. It is just me, myself, and I. Okay. And I'm a Gemini, so there's a lot of me to go around, but it's still actually just one person. So I was just wondering if there was any type of support for people like myself, where it's like the work that I do is multifaceted, but one aspect of it specifically that I'm really wanting to get support and funding around, and hopefully my own kitchen this year, is the nutrition piece that I alluded to in my introduction, because what I have known even before I started doing birth work, and in doing birth work for the past 5 years now, is that nutrition is really a big thing. And it's not so much that like people don't know how to cook or like whatever, but it's, I'm preaching to the choir with this. It's like people think that, people have a whole lot of misconceptions about nutrition in general. And especially during, conception and pregnancy, postpartum, it's like, I have had clients that'll just like go and get hoagies from the Poppy store, and it's like, yo, like, come on. So I started actually doing postpartum care packages for folks, and I really want to focus in on that and getting a kitchen so that I can do postpartum care packages for people throughout pregnancy if they need that support, or just postpartum, or both. And then also more long-term, like going into like doing classes for folks and things like that, so that they can understand that they can make these meals for themselves too. Like, yes, it's cool to get doted on and have somebody make it for you, but you also want to make that lifestyle change so that you're cooking that way for yourself and for your children, and changing that legacy of how we view our nutrition and our eating in the community, and connecting with folks that run community gardens and things like that. So I've started to do that work on my own, but it's a lot doing it by yourself, like making all the phone calls and connecting with all the people and all those things. But it's also hard to break that fear of trusting people with your dream, because if somebody burns me with this, I might have to cut you. Like, I'm just gonna keep it a bean. So what do I do? What can I do?
One of the things I would suggest, and feel free to reach out to us. I have a Google Voice number, but I have to look it up. I don't remember what it is. But one of the things you may want to do is start to involve those for whom you are providing service. Let them be part of your voice. Let them be part of the circle you're forming to provide good nutrition. Let them be part of advocating on behalf of good nutrition, what it meant to them, what it means for other women, how to get involved with women before birth to make sure that they're feeding themselves and their baby the right kinds of foods and nutrition. Those are like some of the kinds of organizing work we're looking for. Don't just do for, help them do for themselves. And therefore you and your organization benefit as well as they benefit.
Yeah. Thank you, I appreciate that. I will definitely work on that. Thank you.
May I extend myself to you? I don't know your name. What's your name?
Iris.
Iris. My name is Sandra Fulton. Can you write my number down? 267-756-0400. Maybe we can just kind of bounce some ideas off of one another. I have some pretty strong connections in the community, and maybe I can just, just be a listening person for you. I'm in West Philadelphia. Again, my number is 267-756-0400.
Okay,
that's
great.
The kind of thing
indeed.
I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
You excited?
Thank you very much. Yes, indeed.
The other thing that becomes important as you consider your work are forming coalitions. There may be two groups that are doing similar work that have more power when they come together. And it's just a matter of working out the details of how the money gets divided, how the work gets divided, who reaches out to which community, how that outreach looks. We encourage that kind of cooperative effort as well.
Awesome.
So thank you, Sappho. Thank you, Iris.
Thank you.
Any
Sandra,
other questions? Yes. Go ahead,
So I just wanted to say, like, we've gone through all the eligibility, all of this is what you want to include in your application. But like, please remember the people who are reading this application are people who are very much like you. So your audience for this grant is not professional grant writers. It's not people who do this for a living. It's not people who are reading your application to criticize you. It's people who are going to be like, oh, I know that organization. I got such and such from them. Or I know Iris, they did my postpartum care. It's going to be people like that. So you get to be, you can be real. Like, you can be real in your application, and that's going to be received really well by the Giving Project members. We're doing environmental justice. That project is coming to an end actually this week. And within that fund, we had a lot of folks who were like doing all kinds of land acquisition, all kinds of things like that. You don't have to be like, oh, like this is how everything we're doing is to the letter of the law. It's organizing. We know, we know. So it's really gonna help you to be real and to be honest about like, why are you doing this? How does it support your community? How does it support you? Because like, imagine the application that you would want to read and that would really excite you. Perfect, like that's what it is. Because it's folks like Sappho who read these applications. Sappho's been part of the Giving Project. Emily's been a part of the Giving Project. Tawana's been a part of the Giving Project. So it's not, you know, buttoned up people who don't know anything about what you're saying.
Hi, Josh, you just joined us. Welcome.
Hello, thanks. Sorry I'm so late.
That's okay. That's okay. We were just answering questions, folks. We did a PowerPoint presentation. This presentation has been recorded, so you'll be able to go onto our website and view it. But if you have any questions, if anybody else has any, and after you review it, Josh, if you have questions, please reach out to us. Don't hesitate. Are there any other questions we can answer for you at this point? Remember, we're here. It's part of our job to reach out to you. Tawana, did you have a question?
I was just going to ask if I could get more information from the from the doula, because I know that at my organization, we have girls who are actually interested in that kind of work. So that would be kind of a cool connection if she doesn't mind sharing.
Peace. Yes, I can type some info in the chat.
Okay.
And what's the name of your organization?
We Reign.
I feel like I've heard of you before. I
Hopefully.
probably have. Yeah. I also used to work at Maternity Care Coalition a couple years ago. I used to be the program assistant for their doula and breastfeeding program.
Okay.
So I might have heard of y'all through there. I don't know. And I'm also on social media a lot promoting my work.
I was going to say,
so
if I can find you on social media, so what's your social media content?
Phoenix Rising Birthworks on both Facebook and Instagram.
I know where we met before. New Voices for Reproductive Justice. Were you there?
Oh, there you go. There you go. Were you at the thing at the museum? At the the art gallery? Okay, yeah, that's why your face looked familiar. All right, bet.
Okay.
I
wrote it down, so I'll contact you on social media.
Okay, cool. Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Cool. I'm making connections.
You are.
Getting things done. I love it.
Awesome.
Remember, we're not competitors. We're community organizers.
That's correct.
The more of us are together, the stronger we are.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, everybody.
Well, thank you all for joining us. If there are any more questions, I can actually give you back almost a half hour of your day. So you can go do what I'm going to do, which is stare at a little snow and be glad I'm inside. Yes, it's this kind of weather that makes you glad you don't have to go to an office or call out snow. It's like, I'm sorry, it's snowing in my house. I can't come in. But thank you for your time. We really appreciate it. Know that we're here for you. We'll answer any questions we can. Reach out to each other. We can help, we can help you in that way too, if you would like. But thank you, Jordan, for your time today from the Giving Project. We really appreciate your information and your hard work in getting this money on the street. Lily, thank you. Lily's a volunteer with Quaker Volunteer Services, and she'll be with us until September. And so we appreciate having her and others like her with us. Thank you again. Peace to everyone. Be careful, take care, be safe. Get your vaccinations. I've had my first one. I'm anxious to get my second one, but I'm going to continue to wear my mask even afterward. But be safe, everyone, and thank you so much.
Everybody be safe, stay warm. Take care.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Don't forget to follow up with me, Iris.
I sure won't. Thank you.
All right, peace.
Peace.
Lily, do you want to end the recording?
Yep.